Bhagavati Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavati Vasudevaya.
Narayanam
Namaskritya
namaskritya
Naram
naram
Chaiva
chaiva
Narottamam
narottamam
Devim
devim
Saraswatim
saraswatim
Vyasam
vyasam
Saraswati
tato
Vyasam
jayamudire
Tathajayamudire
Nasta
nasta
Prayeshu
prayeshu
Prayesho
Nurishya
Nityam
Purishya
Bhagavata
devaya
Sevaya
Sevaya
bhagavati
Bhagavati
loke
Uttamashloke
bhavati
Bhaktir Bhavatu Nairsniki Rishlaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namah Namak Pankajanabhaya Namak Pankajanabhini Namak Pankajanetraya Namaste Pankajangre.
Very good. Well done, Riyansh. Fantastic. So I'd like to welcome all the devotees. We like to seek your good wishes and your blessings so that we can begin another adventure into the Srimad Bhagavad Puran. And hopefully we will get on to the 7th canto today, first chapter. Just before we do that, I wanted to just have a very, very quick overview of what we've done so far. We're around about 40% of the way through, maybe a little less than that, because the 10th canto is huge. So the first two cantos, they're considered to be the Lord's lotus feet, and it's the prelude to the Bhagavatam, because it introduces us to very key the philosophical concepts and also the prominent characters of the Srimad Bhagavad Puran. And these cantos also establish Bhakti Yoga as the topmost spiritual path. And we've seen that theme come right through the Bhagavatam. Every canto really does focus on the importance of bhakti and establishes Krishna as the supreme personality of God, the fountain of head of all incarnations. So there's many in these two cantos. There are wonderful prayers by devotees and how the Lord reciprocates with them. The birth of Parikshit Maharaj was explained, as well as his activities of chastising Kali. And the history of the Bhagavatam came through in these first canto. The circumstances in which it appeared, the Narad Muni advising Srila Vyasadeva. Then the process of creation, the Virat Roop is described. The Chatusloki is in the second chapter, the second canto, which is the seed of the Bhagavatam. And the 10 topics of Puranas are discussed. So that makes it a Purana. Then the third and fourth cantos, they correspond to the thighs of the Supreme Lord, and it primarily discussed the primary and the secondary creation, how Vishnu breathes out, all the universes come out, and then he enters every universe as Garbhodaksha Vishnu, from whom Lord Brahma comes, who does the secondary creation. And that is through the conversation of Vidur and Maitri. We saw that conversation continue for at least 2 cantos. And again, the creation is described, the sub-creation, time, embryology, and family life was described. As Sankhya Yoga through Kapil Dev was described, as well as Bhakti, Sangha, Gyan, and Karma Yogas. The spiritual world, material world, and hell was also described to a small degree in Canto 4 and great degree in Canto 5. And the prominent episodes that took place in the third canto was pastime of Lord Varaha, descriptions of Vaikuntha and also Lord Vishnu, interaction of Kashyap Muni and Aditi, the household life of Karda Muni and Devahuti, as well as the teachings of Lord Kapil. That's the Sankhya Yoga. And the fourth canto was very rich in its content because Maitri continued to talk about the family lines of Swayambhu Manu and their descendants, including Devahuti, Akuti, Prasuti, Uttanpad, and Priyavat. Who remembers who the son of Uttanpad was?
Dhruva.
Fantastic. So many personalities were described in this canto, Lord Shiva and the pastime with Daksha, Suniti, was the mother of Dhruva himself, King Anga, Prithu Maharaj, Pachayatas, and there are examples of extraordinary bhakti in these characters. We also learned about unfavorable attitudes in bhakti from the mistakes of Daksha. We saw how he offended Shiva. Suruchi, the stepmother of Dhruv. Yena was Vena, who was a terrible king. Indra, who is a king of heaven, but he was very mischievous. Prachinabhari, who was preached to by Narad Muni, and the positive transformations that were undergone by many of these personalities, mainly due to the intervention of devotees. It adds to the glory of bhakti. We saw the change in Daksha, also Surichi. When Vena died, Indra also changed. Prachinabhari also changed. Furthermore, the prayers of pure devotees in this canto disclose the foremost aspiration of the devotees to hear Krishna Katha in the association of devotees. By rejecting heavenly enjoyments and even impersonal liberation, which are the result of karma and gyan, such prayers establish the superiority of bhakti yoga. And there were many kings who ruled with full responsibility, but practiced bhakti yoga and then retired in such an exemplary way. They were not attached to the wealth and the power. That included Uddhampa, Dhruv, Anga, Prithu Maharaj, Prachinabhari, who after Narad Muni preached to him. And the Pachetas are glorious. And there are glorious examples of Matajis like Anusuya, Sati, Suniti, Archi, Vairabhi, who were so faithful. They served their husbands so faithfully. They also reached the supreme destinations. Then fifth canto, which was very exciting, talked about Visarga, talked about creation again, describes Priyavrat's dynasty, and talked about the planetary systems, the structure of the universe, which was very challenging. And that corresponds to the lotus navel of the Lord. And he also described how an advanced devotee can fall from his position of spiritual practice and engage in material life, right? And devotees must be remembering the pastime of King Bharat, which was extraordinary pastime. But they never lost their exalted position because the Lord maintains whatever bhakti has been achieved by the person, even though they may temporarily engage in material life. Priyavats exemplified the spirit of sacrificing one's personal desire to be obedient to the orders of superiors. He didn't want to rule the kingdom, but then he was persuaded by Lord Brahma to take charge, and he ruled perfectly. His son was Agnidhar, whose son was Nabhi, whose son was Bharat. Sorry, Rishabdev, whose son was Bharat. And Bharat, we know that pastime, a fantastic pastime. He takes birth as a deer, then a Brahmin. He's all the time remembering who he was in his pastime as Bharat. And he achieved the supreme destination. Then, of course, we talked about the geography of the universe, which was quite a challenging topic, but I think we just about survived that. Canto 6 corresponds to the chest of the Lord, and it's got so many interesting episodes in Canto 6. It talks about the hellish planets. That's right. Hellish planets was discussed in the 5th canto, the last chapter, in fact. And then Parikshit Maharaj asks, how can somebody be saved from these horrible places? And then Parikshit Maharaj gives this fantastic pastime. Sukadev Goswami gives this fantastic pastime of Ajamyo. So how just by chanting the name of Narayan, he achieved great success. So then there was discussion about, Daksha again, who was reborn, that's right. And the daughter of Daksha was Aditi, who married Kashyap. And there was all sorts of things going on. Vishwarup was gave the Narayan Kavach, if devotees remember that, to Indra. But then Vishwarup was deceiving the demigods, so he was killed. And from him came Vrittasura, who fought with the Indra, but he was one of the greatest devotees and achieved the highest supreme position in the spiritual world. And of course, Parikshit was amazed. How come Vatsasura could? Who was Vatsasura before in his previous life? Anybody remember?
Raketu.
Chitraketu.
Yeah, well done, well done. Chitraketu. And that is one of the most instructive pastimes in the Bhagavatam, because it discusses about our relationship with each other. It's a powerful, very powerful pastime to remember. And then there was a discussions about the Maruts, how they were chopped up by Indra in the womb of Aditi, and they actually were promoted to become demigods, which is quite extraordinary. So now we're going to look at the seventh canto. The seventh and eighth cantos, they correspond to the arms of the Lord. Seventh canto describes uti, or the inclination, of which there's two: auspicious, inauspicious. The inauspicious, auspicious is represented by Prahlad, and inauspicious by his father, who was none other than Jay or Vijay. And there's also two types of bhakti: Shuddha bhakti, pure bhakti, or Misra bhakti, mixed with karma or gyan as actually the major element. So there's a little bit of bhakti, but actually the focus is on karma or gyan. And also it focuses on the Lord's apparent partiality. We'll see that discussion between Narad and Yudhishthir. So at the end of the sixth canto, Shukadeva Goswami describes how Vishnu had killed the demons in favor of Indra. And Maharaj Pariksit asks about the apparent partiality of Vishnu in favor of the demigods. And Sukadeva Goswami replied that the Lord is actually neutral, impartial, equal to everyone. He's especially inclined towards his devotees, but nobody is exempt from being his devotee. Anybody can become his devotee. And he reciprocates with their devotion. But he also said, even though the Lord punishes the demons, actually he's giving them benefit by liberating them. So actually the Lord is biased towards the demons. Even though they behave badly, he gives them great mercy. So even his punishment ultimately is to uplift everyone. And we'll see the Lord's astonishing mercy. And there's a discussion about how in the Rajasuya sacrifice, Krishna beheads Shishupal and liberates him. And Yudhishthira is amazed. He's asking Narad, how could this be possible that Shishupal is going to attain the Supreme Lord? He was so envious and offensive against Krishna. And then Narad explains that even somebody who's envious or angry against Krishna, but because he's so absorbed in Krishna, even though it's negative, still he gets the benefit. Of course, we want to do positive bhakti, not negative bhakti. And then he describes the how Shishupal came to this world. It starts with the cursing of the four Kumars, by the four Kumars of the Vijay and Vijay, and the three births that take place. Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha, Ravan and Kumbhakarna and Shishupal and Dantavakra. So let's make a start. Seventh canto, Ki Jai, and first chapter. So this is a verse we can recite.
Kamadvishadvayat snehat yatha bhaktayeshware manaha aveshyat tadagam hitva ahavastat gatim gataha.
Can I read?
Yeah.
Translation. Many persons have attained liberation simply by thinking of Krishna with great attention and giving up sinful activities. This great attention may be due to lusty desires, inimical feelings, fear, affection, or devotional service. I shall now explain how one receives Krishna's mercy simply by concentrating one's mind upon him. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much. Very beautiful verse. Many people have attained liberation just by thinking of Krishna, whether it's positively or negatively. But of course, we always want to focus on the negative, on the positive attitude towards bhakti. Okay, the Supreme Lord is equal to everyone. Lord is impartial. So the first 7 verses describe, Maharaj Parishit inquires, if the Lord is impartial, why does he take the side of Indra and kill Indra's enemies? If the Lord is equal, Sama, how can he show partiality to the devatas? If he is affectionate, Priya, and friendly, Shruta, to all living beings, why is he not affectionate and friendly to the demons? How can a person equal to everyone be partial to some and inimical to others? So really good question, because Sukadeva Goswami explained to him that Krishna protected Indra by killing his enemies. So how can that be? To dispel his doubt, Parikshit asked for positive evidence that Narayan is always neutral and equal to everyone. That's why he's called Parikshit. Parikshit means examiner. So he really examined Sukadeva Goswami. He examined the Vedic knowledge of Sukadeva Goswami. Sukadeva Goswami praises Parikshit's excellent question and answers that although the Lord is always above material existence, he appeared and acted as an ordinary human being, accepting duties and apparently like a conditioned soul. However, the 3 gunas do not even touch the Supreme Lord. Does anybody know what these 3 gunas are?
Sattva, tamas, and rajas.
Very good. Very good. He's in control of them. He's in control of Sattvagun, Rajagun, Tamagun. That's the mode of goodness, passion, ignorance. He's not controlled by them. So when he comes to our world, it may seem that the Lord is just acting like an ordinary human being. But actually he's not, because he's above the 3 modes. When the quality of goodness is prominent, the sages and demigods flourish. In passion, the demons are strong, and in ignorance, the yakshas and the rakshasas flourish. As the supersoul, the Lord in the heart influences the quality of creation in passion, maintenance in ignorance, and annihilation and goodness, in annihilation in ignorance. He then creates the time factor which controls the material energy, hence influencing the 3 gunas. So we know in one day, this time factor is so important. In the morning, we may be a little bit in the mode of goodness because we've woken up and we're chanting our rounds. And as the day goes on, we're a little bit busy. So perhaps the mode of passion takes over. And then in the evening, we're a little tired and the mode of ignorance sets in. So we know the influence of time on the 3 gunas. This time factor enhances the Sattvagun, which means that the demigods are favored and the demons are destroyed. But the Lord is never partial. So Shishupal's liberation. As an example of this impartiality, Sukadeva Goswami refers to a conversation between Narad Muni and Maharaj Yudhishthir that took place at the Rajasuya sacrifice. The whole of this canto is based on this one conversation. So whatever chapters there are, I think 19 or 17, can't remember how many chapters, they all focus on this one point about the impartiality of the Lord. At that time, Krishna beheaded Shishupal and thus liberated him. Yudhishthira personally saw Shishupal merge into the body of the Supreme Lord, Krishna. Struck with wonder, he inquired from Narad, how was it possible for the demon Shishupal to attain Sayujya Mukti, even though he was extremely envious from his very childhood until death? This is impossible to attain, even for great transcendentalists. How then did the enemy of the Lord attain it? And then Yudhishthira explains to Narad Muni. Previously, King Vina had blasphemed the Supreme Lord. And if devotees recall, at that time, the Brahmins, they killed him by mantras. And then they churned his body. And who came out of that body?
Prithu Maharaj.
Yeah, Prithu Maharaj. As well as?
Archie.
Very good, Riyansh. Excellent.
Very good, Riyansh. Oh, my.
Excellent. And they obliged him to go to hell. So Vena, Vena, he insulted the Lord. He was envious of the Lord and the Brahmanas. He didn't attain the Lord. He went to hell. And Shishupal should have also been sent to hell. How then did he manage to merge into the Lord's existence? These are the very, very good questions by Yudhishthir to Narad. And there you go. This is one of the most extraordinary pictures. It says Krishna is destroying Shishupal, chopped his head off with the Sudarshan Chakra. And the soul, actually, everybody saw it. It flew into Krishna. Okay. So, in answer to Maharaj Yudhishthir's question about Shishupal, Narad Muni replied that the conditioned soul who considers this body as himself is subjected to dualities like praise and chastisement. So we are conditioned in this world, conditioned to think that we are this body. So we struggle in this world because we are thinking that I am not the soul, but I am the body. And hence dualities impact us. Heat and cold affect us. Happiness and distress affect us. Praise and criticism affect us. But the Lord is unaffected either by prayers or by blasphemy. So even if somebody is blaspheming the Lord is not impacted by that. Therefore, if a conditioned soul somehow or other concentrates his mind upon the Lord, the result is the same, whether one remembers him by enmity, leading to absorption, of course, otherwise it's bad karma. So if we're angry against Krishna, for example, and that anger is in full absorption, like Kamsa, he couldn't sleep without thinking about Krishna. He couldn't sleep or eat without thinking of Krishna. At every moment, he was thinking about Krishna, of course, negatively, but he was completely absorbed in Krishna consciousness, negatively, like Kamsa. And as was Shishupal in the same way. Or if one remembers him by bhakti, without enmity, like Krishna's parents or the Yadus, they are, and one who remembers him by fear, again, Kamsa was in complete fear, or even the gopis who feared rejecting moral codes, but it didn't stop them. They knew that they were they were going against moral codes when they were going to Krishna in the middle of the night, but it didn't stop them. It liberated them. And so that's right. So if you look at that again, so whether one is in positive Krishna consciousness or negative, as long as absorption is in Krishna, one will achieve Krishna. However, our mood, as described by the acharyas, has to be positive towards Krishna. If we're feeling negativity towards the Lord, that could be very bad karma if we're not fully absorbed. So why think of God negatively? It's not a good thing to do. Let's think about him positively. Sometimes people think about God negatively. Something bad happens to them and they're blaming God. Generally, the first person to turn against is God. Why, God, are you making this happen to me? And we become somewhat angry towards God. So we're remembering God. That's a good thing. But we're not likely to be completely absorbed in remembering God in that anger mood. we're just angry for due to certain circumstances, and that anger passes. So that's why it's recommended that one should be always thinking of the Lord in a positive way. That is not going to lead to bad karma, and that's just going to help us go towards the Supreme Lord. So the associates of the Supreme Lord in the spiritual world descend to the material world. So he's explaining, Narada Muni is explaining, that sometimes for the purpose of fulfilling the Lord's desire, those living in the spiritual world, devotees in the spiritual world, come to this world, material world. And this descent is also compared to the Lord's descent. It is an action of spiritual energy. Jay and Vijay came to this material world to fulfill the Lord's desire to fight. So it wasn't that Jay and Vijay were in Maya. No, Jay and Vijay were fully God conscious. But Krishna put them in Yoga Maya so that they acted against the four Kumaras who cursed them. And this was to fulfill Krishna's own desire of wanting to fight them in this material world. So Narada Muni describes this pastime of Jay and Vijay. And we've heard this before, right? We've heard this before in the third canto. Once the four Kumaras, Sananda, Sanatan, and Sanat Kumar went to Vaikuntha while wandering the three worlds. They look like 5-year-old children, although they are the eldest sons of Brahma. Thinking them to be ordinary children, the two gatekeepers of Vaikuntha, Jay and Vijay, forbade them to enter. Right? They were thinking, who are you to come into the spiritual world? The four Kumaras, however, were very powerful souls. They cursed Jay and Vijay to take birth as demons in this material world. And we know the pastime. At that time, Lord Vishnu came and he apologized for the behavior of Jay and Vijay. And the four Kumaras felt very bad that they had cursed the servants of the Lord. And Vishnu gave the option to the doorkeepers that you can stay in the material world as for 7 lives as my devotees, or 3 lives as my enemies. And of course, they picked the 3 lives as enemies because the Lord wanted to fight anyway, and they didn't want to be away from the Lord too long. And Jay and Vijay, they said, as they were falling, the Kumaras told them, your curse will end in 3 births, and you will be able to return to Vaikuntha. So they were sorry, actually. And the 3 births, we know. Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksh, Ravan, Kumbhakarna, Shishupal, and Dantavakra. So there, whilst Parikshit Maharaj was explaining about, Sukadev, no, Narad Muni was explaining about Hiranyakashipu. He was saying that there was a lot of enmity between Hiranyakashipu and his son, little boy. And in fact, the father would torture the boy. So then Yudhishthira Maharaj asked, why? Yeah, ask him when we can call her back. So Yudhishthira Maharaj was surprised. Why would there be anybody against a little boy who was so dedicated to the Lord? Why was there enmity between Hiranyakashipu, his own father, and his beloved son Prahlad? And how did Prahlad become a great devotee anyway, when he was such a small boy? So this is where the chapter ends. This is the first chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto number 7. Canto 7 Ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Any questions or any comments, please?
Hare
Yes,
Krishna,
Lian.
Prabhuji.
Oh, yes, sir. Mataji, you go first.
All right, okay. How do you know any idea of how long the demons lived in those days? Like Hiranyakashipu, what were the? How long did they live? Each of these in
Quite long lives, but obviously cut short by the Supreme Lord. But they had the potential to live very, very long lives.
Okay.
So I'm not quite sure exactly, but we know Hiranyakashipu, he did meditation for tens and thousands of years to Lord Brahma. So he lived quite a long time.
Long life, yeah.
Yeah, quite well. Probably for Satya Yuga, not such a long time because Nrsingadev came and finished him off.
Mm.
But in consideration of our existence, much, much longer periods of time. In Satya Yuga, they would live long time. In Dwapar Yuga, a little bit less, and Treta Yuga, a little bit less. Oh no, the other way around. Treta Yuga, a little bit less, Dwapar Yuga, a little bit less. And then Kali Yuga, we can be finished at any moment. Thank you, Nanivan. Yes, Priyansh.
Prabhuji know the answer of how Prahlad became a devotee of Lord Sri Krishna.
Go on then, tell us.
Because from his mother's womb, Narad Muni preached about Lord Krishna.
Well done. Fantastic. That's absolutely right. And it shows how it's, people in this world, they commit abortions and so many other things. They kill the child in the womb. But actually the child in the womb is very conscious, is quite alert after a certain period. And our Guru Maharaj always used to say that when the Mataji is having a child, should read the Ramayana out loud as well, if preferably, so that the child can hear, and should always be listening to devotional music and watching devotional films or series like Mahabharata or Ramayana, because the child in the womb actually does pick it up. So it's very interesting, very interesting. So that's how Prahlad Maharaj did become a devotee in the womb of his mother. And it's interesting, his mother didn't become a devotee. She was the wife of Hiranyakashipu. So even though she heard the instructions and understood the instructions, she didn't become a devotee. Anybody else? Anything else? Naniben, anything else? Okay.
No, that's fine.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, I thought I would join, but things get piled up, and if you don't do everything on one day,
yeah,
it rolls over to the next day, and then there's other things apart from the studying, other household things to do, and this to do, and letters to post, and letters to write, and sometimes it's one of those days today, and so I thought I would not be able to join. But I am glad I joined. It was nice. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I didn't read. I managed only read the first 10 verses, but I didn't manage to read.
Yeah.
Today.
Okay.
No.
I think tomorrow we'll do chapters 2 and 3. I think we just keep doing two chapters at the moment.
Yeah. I don't think I'll be able to read because there's other things
going on. Yeah. That's okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Anybody else? Anything else? So I think Madhusudan Prabhu, you haven't managed to do the instruction. That's okay. You can maybe do tomorrow. You can do it tomorrow. But if you anything you'd like to share.
Haribol, Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Yeah. So the instructions, I'll do that tomorrow.
That's fine.
For the first chapter, because I don't know how far you was going to get to today, or you're doing overview or something. So, yeah, but this is obviously the start of a wonderful pastime of Prahlad Maharaj and Hiranyakashipu, and this is really an amazing part. And if anybody gets a chance to watch Hari Darshan on YouTube, that'll be a good recollection of the pastimes, and Prahlad Maharaj was an amazing, great devotee who actually, to protect him, even, and that just shows also that the Supreme Lord, Krishna, can do anything he wants. If he wants to appear out of a pillar, well, we'll come to those sort of pastimes, but it's amazing. Nothing is impossible. But also, when in the beginning, when Maharaj Parikshit is asking questions as to how come Krishna appears to be, biased towards demigods, but he's actually not biased. He's actually quite, as in the Bhagavad Gita also says, Samodarshina, he's equal vision, is neutral in a way. So he's not biased towards demigods, but to us, because we are influenced by the material natures, from our perspective, it appears that, the Lord is biased as such. But no matter what, good or bad, because that just shows that, Krishna is transcendental, he's above the three modes of material nature. So he's not affected, or the modes of material nature don't control Krishna. Otherwise, they would be greater than Krishna, So that would be God, when they, three modes of material nature. So that only applies within this material world. So, but because he's transcendental, from his transcendental perspective, everything is equal vision, and everyone benefits in a way, even through a negative path. The demigods and the demons go the negative way, but still they benefit by the Lord's mercy, So, yeah, okay. Well, it's nice that, we back to Srimad Bhagavatam, and 7th Canto was done wonderfully so far. Haribol.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madhusudan Prabhu. Okay, so let's stop the share and Bhagavatam ki